You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
And welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. Happy 4th of July, everybody. It's Monday, July 4th, 2022. How you doing, Kristina Dennis?
I am doing wonderful, Damon Frank. How are you?
I am doing well. It's another episode of the Recovered Life Show. I am thrilled to be with everybody today. I know you are as well. We even have the red, white, and blue going on today.
We did it. It's one of the it's a fun holiday, and I love dressing up, and red is not normally something I wear. So for today, I decided to flash it out a little bit. How about you? You got big plans?
You know what? I actually, right when you said that, I thought, you know what? I had a 4th of July shirt I could have worn. This is the biggest challenges of being a podcast host, right? Did I wear the right shirt? Yes. We're spending it with family this year, which I'm thrilled about. People that we haven't seen since the COVID epidemic, so
exactly.
It's good, kind of getting back to normal, but the world is still in a really crazy place, Kristina.
It really is. And I'm not sure if there ever will be a normal. I think this is what you would call the new normal, maybe a little more contentment. I don't know. It's pretty tricky times, but I love summer, and I love what 4th of July means to me as a person, and also being a sober person. But before we get into the freedom, I want to remind everybody, come join us over at the Recovered Life app, info.recoveredlife.us. It's completely free, the membership. Continue to like, share, follow, and give us some ideas of what you would like to discuss. If you join the community, we have this wonderful system where we are able to volley back and forth, and there's so much out there for you to support you. So don't forget to check us out at info.recoveredlife.us.
Oh, thanks so much for mentioning that. They get so much with this free membership. You get emails about exclusive content, free access to both you and I, Kristina, on the Volley app, the daily drink. And I have to tell you, I took a week off for a vacation, for a family vacation, which I rarely do. And I didn't do the daily drink every day. I just did a couple of them, and I missed it. And I had people from the community. Yeah, I had people from the community sending me volleys and messages saying, hey, when's the daily drink coming back? So I'm glad now that we've been doing that every day for the additional week. So definitely, if you're not a member, join us there. Kristina, a good topic today. We're talking about freedom from addiction. Today is the 4th of July. Everybody talks about freedom, about being free.
Yes.
But sometimes we don't appreciate enough, our personal and political freedoms to be able to do things in the world, right? Being Americans. We don't appreciate enough also the freedom that we have from being recovered from really a hopeless state of mind and body.
So true. And I think it's one of the most beautiful things that we do over here at Recovered Life is that we remind people that, first of all, when I was out there, holidays like this were so tormented, right? Because it felt like it was a license to behave any way I wanted to. But of course, me being the alcoholic that I was, would overshoot and end up being, passed out or doing something humiliating, having to kind of piece it together the next day. And I do remember just that torment. And what I think is so important that we share here, since the topic is freedom, that you actually are gaining freedom if you're willing to surrender to sobriety. Now, I didn't know that. I want to continue to shout it from the rooftops for as long as I can be on this earth, because what this holiday does for me specifically is it reminds me of what it used to be like. I get to see people struggling, behaving in a way that they maybe wish that they weren't behaving. And I get to remember that I wasn't the type of drinker that could just go have one or two at a block party. That was never my deal. That's what I tried to start doing. Do you remember this ever? Where
Absolutely.
at first I just went for it. I just got sloppy drunk. And then of course that was signed off to, I'm new at this. I didn't eat enough, all of the stuff that we tell ourselves. And then alcohol became its own kind of jail to me.
Like when we were looking at doing this episode and we were saying, what would a great topic for the fourth would be freedom.
Mhm.
Because, one of the things that when I looked back and I was thinking about this and preparing for this episode, I realized, look, there's so much stuff going on when you are actively addicted. One is there's the
Yes.
physical addiction, right? And this is
Mhm.
funny because everybody who's an alcoholic and in recovery looks back and say, wow, I really underestimated how much actually I was physically addictive. So you have that going on. You're trapped. You're not free when you've got to plan when your next drink is. Then you have
Yes.
this whole emotional thing that's going on, this thinking thing that's going on, trying to talk yourself out of reality is kind of what you're saying. It's like the
Yes.
reality is I can't stop drinking and then I'm addicted to it and I'm not free. But yet our mind is telling us at the same time, no, this is just a phase. You're really free by being able to do this, right? You're
Yes.
not trapped. Keep going. Everything's going to be fine. These people are total wusses. Don't listen to what
Mhm.
they're saying, right? So you have
Right.
this and you realize now, now that I've been sober several decades, I look back on that. And then, of course, you and I work with people who are actively addicted, right? And are trying to get
Yes.
clean. And we realize, like, I look at it, Kristina, I was like, wow, man, I was so trapped back then. I was anything but free.
Yes. So see, sobriety is liberating. And I didn't know that. And what you're describing, and I call it terror because that's what it felt like to me. Complete terror. I couldn't live with it and I couldn't live without it. And I had no idea how to handle it. I had no idea how to stop it. I was so physically addicted that if I partaked in one, I was definitely going to go to blackout, regardless of how much I planned, the pressure of, drink a glass of water in between each one. None of that worked. And there was this knowing, and I think that a lot of people who have, who maybe are in active addiction, this might speak to them. There's this knowing that time is, the end is coming near. There is this, I mean, we now know that it's actually a physical product of alcohol. I mean, everybody knows it's depressive. It's a depressive, but we don't really know that our body actually flushes us full of, negative types of emotions to kind of counteract the dopamine, a negative chemical. But that knowing that it's coming to the end, that there is something wrong with the way I'm drinking, but I cannot see a time in my life that I could not have a drink. And that
Yeah.
is prison.
Yeah. And, I think one of the things about freedom that's confusing for people is that when they first get into recovery, or maybe even years later, they're like,
Mhm.
it may be their life isn't working out like they had planned. So they associate being free with everything going their way. I know I have
Right.
at the bed, but that's
Yes.
not freedom. That's not
No.
freedom, right?
No,
Freedom is
no.
the ability to really be able to really the ability to be able to be able to take action. Not that all the actions you take are going to be perfect and that you're going to feel perfect all the time. That is not being free.
No, no, that's a pipe dream. And we've talked many times on this show about how, we define happiness versus joy versus accomplishment. And I don't believe that you're free just because your life has no problems, because I just don't believe that's possible. And we know plenty of people who have the money, or they have the relationship, or they have all of it, that are still struggling with everything that we need to learn in sobriety to be free. Having true self-reliance and reliance on a power greater than yourself is freedom. It is freedom. Knowing that you're one of many, knowing that the world isn't depending on you, knowing that you have intrinsic value because you showed up, not because of what you did. These are the lessons that we learn in sobriety. And many people will say this, and I think maybe it takes a little bit of time, hopefully not too much time, for you to understand that you will give up everything for one thing if you keep drinking alcoholically and you don't surrender. But once you do surrender, you give up one thing for everything. And there is complete freedom to have bad days, good days, to be in your body. You have choice. When I was drinking, the opportunity to have choice was taken from me.
Well, we think getting sober is taking that choice away. Well, you're reducing my choices. I'm
Right.
less free if I can't drink. But I'm telling you, anyone who's listening to this right now that's in active addiction or thinking, man, maybe alcohol is really what's going on. Because look, we get contacted all the time Kristina, with people who say, well, I don't think I'm an alcoholic, or I don't think I have an addiction problem to drugs, but all these things are happening to me. It's that denial that's kicking in, right? It's saying, well, you know what? I'm going to be less than if I can't drink and use drugs. I'm going to be less free. I found that not to be the case.
No, it isn't, but it is a paradox, isn't it? That we take away this choice, but we make the choice to stay sober. We make the choice to surrender. And it does give us freedom from the obsession, which is something that they talk about in the big books of Alcoholics Anonymous. And whether you're a 12-stepper or not, whether you want to believe you're an alcoholic or not, we all know, and I think we're getting closer and closer to this being a true knowledge, that alcohol doesn't really help any situation. It may eventually, I'm going to say something controversial, but I think in 100 years, people are going to look back and say, why did you ever drink? That doesn't make sense. I could be wrong, but we know the health implications. And so I ask that person who says, it's not a big deal. It's no big deal if I have a drink or two, knowing that if they're concerned about it and it's really no big deal, then why not give it up? Why not?
Well, I would even say even a step further. One of the reasons I think that people drink, and they drink alcoholically, even though they know that they are an alcoholic and they know it's killing them, is that they really can't handle being free. Because handling being free means is you'd have to live in the here and now. And that's something definitely that most alcoholics don't want to do.
No, nobody does, right? I mean, it's just more pronounced in alcoholics or people who have addiction or substance abuse disorder. It's so scary to live in the here and now, but we don't want to. If I could give somebody who's trying to decide or fighting or resisting that surrender just a week, without having this monkey on their back, with having the freedom, I feel like we could, people would just give it up and say, okay, because it's hard to explain. And I think one of the things that we try to do in Recovered Life is show people you can have a big, beautiful life without alcohol. You can have a big, beautiful life because you gave up alcohol. It is the ticket to your freedom and having better relationships, feeling good in your skin, feeling free to make choices. And it's, if it's, quote, no big deal, then why not experiment? Right? We've done shows about that, where the world is starting to experiment with sobriety. And I know Recovered Life is really about addiction, but I so wish there was a way that you and I could bottle it up and say, trust me, just trust me and surrender, because your life will be beautiful.
Well, I want to, you know what, Kristina, after this quick break here, I want to talk about the steps that people could take if they're listening to this right now and saying, you know what, man, I'm not free. I am addicted, and that I can't get out of this. I'm not free. The steps that people could take to get freedom from being addicted. Okay, so we're going to discuss that when we come back after this really quick break. If you are newly sober, trying to get sober, or you've been sober for decades and are looking to take your sobriety to the next level, the Recovery Breakthrough 6-week transformation concierge coaching program might be right for you. Have Damon Frank and Kristina Dennis build a custom roadmap to get you on the path to getting what you really need. Receive hands-on concierge coaching and stay focused and productive with our daily check-ins. If you're ready to experience your recovery breakthrough and start the journey towards the transformation you deserve, book a free get-to-know-you call today and find out what is possible in your recovery. To find out more about Recovery Breakthrough and to book your free call, go to recoveredlife.us. That's recoveredlife.us.
You're listening to the Recovered Life Show.
Okay, Kristina, we're talking about freedom here. We're talking about freedom from addiction. How do you do it? If somebody's listening to this and saying, you know what, man, I'm not free. I'm trapped. I have to plan my next drink. I have to plan my next drug. Maybe it's codependency they're trapped in, right? Which I know you deal with a lot of codependency. What would you tell people the first step to do if they feel that they're not free?
Get some help. Get some help from people who've done it, please. Don't do it alone. You don't have to. You don't have to. I couldn't have done it alone. And you know, if you're struggling, raise your hand and say help, and be just the tiny bit willing, right, to listen to somebody else's idea. You know, I remember being in rooms many years ago where old timers would say, "I want more than anything for you to have desperation." And I remember I used to think that was so mean, right? Like, what are you talking about? But now I see it, because it's so much more painful to watch somebody still have something left over to keep fighting. So my first thing with everybody is get some help. There's a huge community out there that can jump in and help.
Well, you know what? I think one of the problems is with people getting into a recovered life, Kristina, is that they want to take a bite of the whole elephant. And I think that they look at the landscape and they look at people that they know are sober, or they walk in a 12-step meeting, they look around, or they look at that uncle or family friend or whatever that's sober, or the counselor or the rehab, and they make a judgment that they have to swallow it all at one time.
Nope.
And that I found isn't the truth. There are things that I don't necessarily agree with or relate to in 12-step programs or in counseling or whatever. Hasn't been my personal experience. But I think that the one thing is that one little change, and we know the precursor to transformation is willingness. Like you said, is just to be willing to be able to listen, that maybe there's something that you don't know about yourself or about your situation or about your relationship with alcohol. Just that little bit of willingness. I don't have to buy that I've got to go to a meeting every day, or have to have this sponsor, or go to this therapy or this rehab. Just to be willing, to be open to say, you know what, let me look at this objectively. Maybe alcohol and drugs really is my problem.
Oh, you bring up such a good point. It's one of my favorite things when I work with people. And, you know, I've heard it called spiritual flexibility. And I believe that that is what I will always be working on. And what you're describing is just willing to listen to somebody else's ideas or some other thought, right? We know that our brain is lazy, and that is everybody's brain, right? It's an organ that is effectively going to try to find the quickest way to the end point, right? That is why we become physically addicted to alcohol, because it's the best way to get dopamine above sex, food, shopping, money, everything, right? And that's why it is so highly addictive. And so when we have a brain that is telling us, no, you need this is what you need, you have to have dopamine to stay alive, you've got to get it this way, we don't have agency or know how to handle our own brains. They call it the disease brain. Back in the 30s, when the big book was written, they called it the phenomena of obsession. And we've seen neuroscience proven over and over again in some of the recovery techniques that are more well known now. And so that spiritual flexibility, that maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying you're right, but maybe I'm wrong. And there is some kind of new information out there that I can assimilate. I personally don't care if somebody never wants to refer to themselves as an alcoholic, if they want to call it something else, you know, substance abuse disorder. I know words have power, but if you don't have that flexibility inside of yourself, or even just being willing, I always tell people, start with the affirmation, I am changing, and give your brain a little notice that really what you want is to change.
Well, I think, warning signs that addiction has you trapped is that if you are unwilling to give it up for a period of time to see, because I remember, look, I'm going to be honest with you. When I walked in, I had a very interesting introduction to sobriety, because I was at the end. I didn't really know any sober people. For me, I think it was a God intervention. Literally came in and just plopped me in the middle of a 12-step meeting when I had no desire to do that really at all. I wasn't seeking it out. No. So for me, it was kind of unusual, but it's interesting. I remember very early on, after a day, I knew I had to stop or I was going to die. So it was like
Really?
I stopped for 24 hours. And then I remember the next day kind of saying, well, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? Can I just quit for a period of time? And I remember people telling me, and they said, why are you fighting so hard on this? You just admit you almost killed yourself, right? Like, why are you fighting so hard? And I realized, wow, that's addiction right there. I'm fighting against reality.
Yes.
George Snyder, who's a friend of the show and who
Love
we've had
him.
on several episodes, he always tells me, he says, you know what, Damon? He said, if you've got a bunch of evidence and problems that you can't solve, maybe it's a fact. Maybe it's just a
Yes.
fact. A problem that you can't solve is a fact. Like, you know what? I can't drink like a normal person. So for me, the understanding of I knew something was wrong and I had to stop, but the understanding that I can't drink like my fellows really didn't come right away. It came
No.
later. Now I was lucky I didn't drink in the middle of that time. And that's what I think a good group or a good coach or a good therapist is going to allow you to be able to do, is to give you a fighting chance. But it's not
Yes.
going to come all at once. And my big question I always have, and I know when you and I work with people, Kristina, it's like, why are you fighting so hard to defend the undefendable?
Right. Right. And it's that fear of being lost. It's every human's nature to want to know exactly where we are right at this moment. And we do this by looking in the past or looking in the future. And we use the information that we have to make a choice, right? And so using somebody else's information, letting go of a little resistance and saying, you know what? I'm willing to just not drink today. I mean, I remember very much on the phone with that outpatient person when I first went to my employer and said that I thought I had a drinking problem with no knowledge of 12 steps or even long-term sobriety. All I knew was that I was tired and exhausted, and it seemed to be tied up into drinking. I had enough wherewithal to kind of attach it. And her saying, just don't drink today. And I thought she was crazy, right? Because I had periods of sobriety when I was on antibiotics where, I could go 7 days because I was more afraid of being sick, I guess. But when I went and I started hearing my story over and over again, and I started hearing the phenomena of craving described, and I started realizing that other people don't care, they're not nearly as connected to it when they're going to get the next one. I kept hearing myself and hearing my stories and people over and over again. I started to realize there was no turning back. It was me. It was me inside of me. And I actually told my friends and family, this is me. And several of them didn't want to believe it. I was, younger, 27 years old, still, successful, still just a little wild. Oh, you just like to let loose. My dearest friend of all time was like, no, don't call yourself that. That's not what you are. And she didn't care if I drank or not. She was just so afraid of the word. And that's where I think that, we still need to do some work on this shame around alcoholism. I love your strawberries situation that you share. I just love that, where if you broke out into hives every time you ate strawberries and your throat closed up, you would stop eating strawberries.
Absolutely.
And some of us,
Absolutely.
yeah. And if we could just think about, I have an actual physical allergy to alcohol. It makes me throw up and black out. That's enough.
Well, look, Kristina, we know that alcoholism is a thinking problem. And, people ask me, we work with families. They'll ask us, well, how do we know if this is going to work? How do we know if there's going to be a transformation? How do we know? What are the signs, right? And I always say the first sign to somebody who's a chronic relapser, just chronically relapsing, is the words, I don't know. For them to finally say, when really in a deep discussion of why did you pick up? Everything was going well. I don't know. Hey, now that is some honesty, because alcoholics really don't know. There isn't a deep thinking process behind it. The thinking is warped in the relationship with alcohol, right? And it will always be warped. It will always be warped. And this is the thing that I found. But this whole, just even the admission of willingness to be able to get free is I don't know why I'm constantly relapsing. I thought I knew that it was a self-control issue, but clearly I've tried the self-control mechanisms and those haven't worked. And I'm going to now be honest to say, I don't have to say that I'm an alcoholic. I don't even have to say that I have a drinking problem, but at least if somebody could say, I don't know why I'm doing it.
Yes.
And I think I maybe need to explore that. There we go. There is that opening of willingness that's going to get you to the other openings that are going to need you to get you on the path of sobriety.
Right. And it's such a human condition to believe that we're supposed to know something. You know, we talk about this a lot in our rooms on Clubhouse about perfectionism, about, you know, this imposter syndrome. All of it goes back to shame, right? And shame comes when we think we're supposed to be doing something different, but we don't have any tools to do it. Right? We don't have any tools to do it. And so if there was no possibility of healing shame, it would feel terrible to take something away from somebody that helps self-medicate. Most people are using alcohol to self-medicate. And
well, yeah. Well, look, I mean, Kristina, you say it all the time when we look in the family unit, when there's generational alcoholism and codependency,
yes.
and then the parent or the loved one might turn around and say, well, I don't know why Johnny can't stop drinking, and why he's not honest about it and why he can't just say, I don't know. Well, you know what? Generationally, the family wasn't able to not have an answer when dad or grandpa or grandma or Aunt Matilda went off. They couldn't be in a position where they didn't have the answer, right? So this is even more problematic, I think, with people that come in that want to get free, but they really can't get honest at the end of the day. And if they can get honest, the worst thing that they could do was to tell somebody that they're powerlessness. Like I tell people all the time, man, I think recovery is just absolutely amazing if we could ditch the powerlessness and unmanageability side of this.
Yes.
And maybe have a cocktail every once in a while.
Right. It would be great.
A program here. But it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't. And I wish, like I said, I always feel like sobriety, if you've seen those videos where somebody's been colorblind and they get those fancy glasses for the first time and they put them on and immediately the person starts to cry. Gaining sobriety, gaining this freedom will feel like that. It won't be in one shot, but I can tell you that first year when I started seeing how much I didn't have to worry, I would catch myself having anxiety about going someplace. And then I would remember, oh, that's right. I don't have to worry about how I'm going to get home and how I'm going to pace myself and what I'm going to look like. I don't even have to go. There is true freedom. There is true freedom.
Absolutely.
Available.
You know what? I'm so glad we're doing this. I'd sort of cut you up, but I'm so glad we're doing this because we don't talk about the freedom enough. The fact of the matter that you and I didn't drink ourselves to death, and that we know hundreds and thousands of people in recovery that were way worse off than we were, and they're running around having great lives, tells anyone who's listening to this that isn't free that freedom is possible for you. And for me, that's amazing. If you were to tell me that I would have been worried when I came in to the whole sobriety game, right? When I came into this whole thing, if that I would be thrilled that other people could get free, I would have laughed. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But it is the most amazing thing to help people break the chains of addiction and to actually truly live a free life.
So true. And today, especially if you are new in recovery,